Hello and welcome to the Sovereign Self Show. I am your host, Loren Cellentani, and this is a show you learn how your body and emotions are not in the way, they are leading the way. And today our amazing guest, Kayse Garrett, is here to talk all things about microdosing for physical health, mental resilience, spiritual development. And we're going to dive deeper into all that in just a second. Before we do, Kayse is one of the most highly regarded, sought-after guides for the medicine of the moment, microdosing earth medicine practice, founded in 2020 and is grounded in nearly 3-decade career in the healing arts. The Microdosing for Healing platform, program, and community has served over 1,100 diverse individuals around the globe. In addition to founding Microdosing for Healing and Microdosing for Healing podcast, Kayse guides Microdosing Mastermind for Healing Artists, an exclusive mastermind for wellness professionals, incorporating microdosing into their professional practices. Welcome, Kayse, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. This is a fun topic to dive into. People all have their own perspectives on it, so we'll dive into that in a second. But another thing we all have our own perspectives on, what I love to hear people's perspectives about, is their sovereign self. What does your sovereign self mean to you?
I love this question so much. And people in my community that are listening to this are going to be smiling at this question because it's a word we talk about a lot. And a lot of mushroom practice is all about deconditioning. Deconditioning our energetic selves, our conditioned selves, all the things that the world has told us who we are versus who we came here to be. And so microdosing practice for a lot of people is stepping into their sovereignty for the first time in their life. So that's, to me, it's kind of like tapping back into your innate essence of self, getting aligned with who you are, and then expressing that out into the world.
Yes. And I know, microdosing plant medicine is a great way to assist in your own abilities to do that. So I'd love to first dive into that. The whole bio, people probably heard microdosing about 10 times. So if you could just explain, I'm sure our audience knows, but explain, what's the difference between microdosing and maybe just a plant medicine journey, so to speak, so we can kind of set the stage for what we're going to be talking about.
That's a great opening question. I work with a lot of beginners and a lot of 80s kids, who have a lot of stigma and around. So yes, I mean, part of what I love about microdosing is it's taking small, tiny subperceptual doses of usually a psychedelic medicine. In my case, it's mushroom medicine, and you don't trip. You don't feel altered. You don't feel out of it. You actually are taking what I call it's more of a spiritual supplement, I like to call it, than a drug hallucinatory experience. You're completely in the earth realm. You're completely in control. And it's a way to gain all of the benefits of, say, a high dose experience, but in a very subtle, gentle way that's very easy to integrate into your day-to-day life.
Yes, I'm thinking kind of similar ties. People take CBD, right? People take the CBD I take actually has a micro dose of THC. I can't feel it, but people understand those kind of benefits. So, kind of relating to it, not apples to apples situation, but similar experience. It allows you, from my experience, to be more present with what's coming up. What is the internal, scientific, but also emotional, energetic, what's shifting there that would be different from not microdosing?
So many things. So other physical benefits, mental, emotional, spiritual, and growth, I would say, general, and energetic benefits. So the one, because we are physical, mental beings, we tend to focus most on those things. So from a scientific perspective, psilocybin works with our brain, our 5-HTP receptors to be specific. And it works on the brain in that it opens up our minds to form new neural pathways. So it makes us more open-minded, more expansive. We make new connections. And so it's a great thing to pair with lifestyle change and growth. because it just kind of amplifies all of the good things that you're doing in the rest of your life. So I work with a lot of people who've done every modality, every training, lots of therapy, lots of programs, and they've done all the things, but then they start microdosing and it's like, oof, it just takes everything to a whole new level and integrates everything that they've already done.
Yeah, for me, a long time, no plant medicine whatsoever. And that was very much part of my belief, like, oh, no pharmaceutical, no medicine of any kind. Like, I can produce this myself. And I guess, what do you say? Because, my perception has flipped on this. So somebody who's like this purist, right? Who almost has this like self-righteous, well, I don't need an external, which is another spiritual journey in itself, that perception, to jump into this and to try to help just, I get, it's like a support system to kind of help you what you're already doing.
Yeah, I'm smiling because the purists like that often have a really incredible, powerful experience once they kind of get their head out of their way, right? Because they are to a large extent like clear and clean and coherent in their energy, which is very helpful to the medicine experience. One thing for those people that present the way you describe is differentiating between pharmaceutical medications and nature. I don't even really consider microdosing is not a drug experience. It's nature. It's just us and we are nature. They're nature. We don't like to think of ourselves as fungus, but we're part of the spectrum of life. And so it's just reconnecting us with nature. So there really is no separation that we think. So it's not in nature's case, and certainly with plant and earth medicines, we're not really using a drug versus we are just reconnecting with our natural being.
Beautiful. And I think, a lot of the women I work with, very spiritually based, but very also driven. So there's this balance of like divine feminine, masculine, where just sometimes overly go, 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 go in your mind, trying versus coming back to the body and being present. And microdosing or not, I see a lot of the time, once myself included in my journey and my clients, once we take the second to be present, breath work is a great tool as well. Like you said earlier, that you're already aware of the energy, so the energy just kind of starts to activate in them. So for women listening, because that's our listeners, they've been on their own healing journey, kind of what I was alluding to earlier. They've done, maybe they are on the plant medicine journey, I don't know, but you've gone through something and now they want to give that medicine, so to speak, back to the world, but they're coming up against themselves. The self-sabotage, overthinking, the burnout. How is this a great option to help support them as they start to rebalance those energies and really step into that sovereignty?
I love this question so much. And I've worked with so many women that are exactly as you described there, powerful and accomplished and so just dynamic people. And what happens when they start working with mushrooms is it's energy medicine, and in a way they can tap back into, it's almost a reclamation. That's the best word for it. It's a reclamation of their own energy, because so many women have had to step out of their feminine too far into their masculine in a reaction to things that were done or conditioned in them when they were young children, right? Is their energy, instead of sustaining themselves in a feminine flow, all of their energy is going outwardly, outside of themselves, to the external, whether it's how they look or how they behave or how they're regarded or how much they achieve at work, how much money they made, the title they have. And once they can reclaim their own energy and step back into their feminine, they're resourced from a place that's endlessly abundant and very, very different. It's just as powerful. It just runs on a different frequency. And to watch them step into that is really something remarkable to behold. I have so many cases of witnessing women like in the first 6 weeks and now looking at their lives 6 months, year, 3 years later, when they can make all of their decisions from this place of self-empowerment. It's pretty amazing.
So if people are listening, they're intrigued, they've heard about microdosing before. At what point, I'm sure it's every point, but at what point is someone thinking, is this good for me? Like you mentioned earlier, during times of transition and change. But if someone's listening, like we just described, and kind of in her head about, okay, well, is this something that would help benefit me along my journey? What point do you suggest that it's in alignment to dive in this avenue?
Beautiful question. I think one of the two things, the first thing is mushrooms in particular, I find they speak to every individual and they come to every individual in exactly the right time. So a lot of times people, it's not so much they're mentally searching for this, it calls them. And they're like, I can't get away from it. Like I've seen it, I'm hearing about it, every conversation I have. It's just like spirit kind of tugs at them in a funny way that they get drawn and magnetized to it. So the other thing is people get drawn to very specific things, right? Like they usually have they want to drink less, right? Or they want to improve they have a lot of migraines and they want that. And so they step into practice for a very specific intention. But that's just the key, right? That's the key that unlocks us stepping in. There's so much more to it than that. So there's physical, mental, emotional. There's very few people for that reason that mushroom medicine is not good for, right? So answer when people are like, is this for me? Our community is people 19 to 91 at this point is our age range in our community. And so it's for most people. The only time I have people wait and kind of start with more lifestyle-based practices first before beginning actual practice is if someone is in a really raw state of transition. So say they just lost a pet or they're in the middle of a divorce. And sometimes if I get the sensation that someone is trying to escape or move through a difficult experience faster, I will slow the process down because a lot of times the way mushroom medicine works, it makes you feel more bigger, more nuance, more complexity to your emotion. And so if someone is already kind of pinned at the max that they can handle, and I ask them, can you imagine feeling any more than you do right now? If they're like, oh no, no, we'll just slow the process down, right, until they're in a better place. So I work with a lot of people who've been through some really, really challenging situations that they're kind of 6 months out from or a year out from.
That's very good to know because I know myself and a lot of the listeners, we're very empathic, feel a lot already. So allowing that process, I feel like I've been in that process right now. And you said divorce, and almost 10 years ago, I was going through a divorce. And my body was just that raw state emotionally, physically. Like I couldn't have any form of caffeine or even maca powder. My body was so sensitive because it was going through this like death and rebirth. Like it was just right. I was cracked open. And people listening can relate that dark night of the soul energy, which is beautiful. And there's no, being present in that magic. Life is cyclical. It is not linear. Allowing yourself to get to that state of stability and then deep diving. And thank you for sharing that, like spiritual bypassing almost aspect of it. I wouldn't have thought of that because, I am that kind of person like, okay, well, what's the next healing? What can I do next to, learn and grow instead of, okay, Loren, just sit and allow. Your body knows what to do. And that's why the show's tagline is your body and emotions are not in the way, they're leading the way. So with that being said, your body and emotions aren't in the way, they're leading the way. How does mushrooms and microdosing from like an energetic standpoint, spiritual standpoint, start to help. I've worked a lot, not so much with mushrooms, but with marijuana and really that plant medicine. And that has active, my Kundalini was already very, very active. And that coming into the divine feminine, just like I was called to it. It really helped me tune into the spiritual abilities that were already there, but I was able to focus and practice with her. So I would love to hear from a mushroom side. Everybody's different, right? Everybody's called to it for different reasons. But your perspective on the spiritual side of that.
So beautifully said. And what I would share is, very, very similar. It's you're kind of summoned to it. A lot of women, once they start microdosing, they're like, it's funny. This feels new, but it feels old. Like it feels very familiar, and it's more like a remembering than it is kind of a novel thing that they've never done before. So, I mean, what I have seen and witnessed from an energetic perspective and a spiritual perspective is mushrooms remediate us much like they do in nature, right? They come in, they kind of scan us, they see our wounds, they see our weak spots, they know how we divinely communicate. And so the mushroom can kind of, sometimes people experience the medicine through their body. They're very physical people. And so they'll have a lot of somatic sensations coming up that are clues and threads to follow. Other people are very mental people. So they'll notice like their ideas are different. They're connecting dots differently. They're coming up with new ideas. Their creativity blows open. Other people are very spiritual people. And so they'll have mystical experiences and lots of fantastic nature connections happen and powerful dreams happening. So the medicine knows how to work with you, how to talk to you. And simultaneously, the mushrooms are helping us shed a lot of fear frequency, a lot of density, a lot of heaviness, a lot of things from this lifetime, past lifetimes. And so you can see people getting lighter and brighter and more radiant as they practice with mushrooms. It's very cool to see with people starting at all different points in our community and our programs, because you can see people shifting and how light they are, how bright they are. And I think that is that like thinning of the veil that we can then connect with our intuition, our spirit guides, our angels. It just kind of thins that human conditioning that separates us between those things. So that's what I have seen and witnessed.
Yes, I think it's I love what you said, the thinning of the veil. It's not something that's not already there. It's just we're able to like fine tune the frequency of those gifts, of those messages, of those connections that maybe we could have otherwise, but it would have taken a lot more focus. It's probably. And then I realized, after working with plant medicine, it's like, oh, that kind of gave me that neural pathway, like you said at the beginning of the show. I was able to build that connection within myself. So now moving forward, regardless of plant medicine or microdosing, I'm able to really tap into that power, tap into whatever that changes within myself.
Yes. And that's one of the big, big differences. And it's hard because we're so conditioned in our drug culture and our prescription culture that a lot of people tap into these abilities and things, or they have such relief from symptoms, and they worry that when they stop cannabis or they stop mushroom, they're going to lose it. It's as if they have to keep taking it, but then they stop and they realize, oh, it was me. It was me that healed. Yeah. It was just the plant and the earth just helped give me the boost that I needed to reconnect to myself. Yeah.
Beautiful. So everybody's journey is different, but could you walk us through a journey of starting maybe with one of your programs, a journey of starting microdosing? What does that look like? What does the support kind of look like throughout that journey?
What a great question. Yes, absolutely. One of the things I share with people, especially in the group experiences, you'll get to see everybody's path is completely unique and divinely inspired. Like everybody moves at their own pace, and it works differently with each person's soul. So some people will start practice and literally the medicine will already be communicating with them before they even start. Like as soon as they make the commitment, things start to shift and happen and just get aligned. And those tend to be people that have done all the things, right? They're like, I've been doing therapy, I train this, I'm certified in this and that and this and that. And it can happen really, really fast. The first benefits people tend to feel are cognitive benefits. So your mind is just so clear, you're more articulate, you're more in flow, you feel more upbeat, you feel energized, but in a calm, sustained way. Less procrastination. You just find like you're just doing things more naturally with ease. The other thing people notice early on is a connection with other people. Mushrooms are very much of relational medicine. So you'll notice energetic shifts between you and your pets, or you and your kids, or you and your spouse. And it's because it's energetic, it's subtle, but it's really profound. And so oftentimes people, once they start practicing, it's their kids and their animals and their spouse that notice the shift in them before they even do. They're like, there's just something different about you. You're responding and relating differently in the world. So those are the first things. Other people take a little bit longer. And usually that's because they have to shed some degree of trauma, grief, anger from the body. And so it's not that nothing is happening. It's just like the beautiful, fun gifts can't come through yet. And this was my experience. Like when I first started, my first 4 or 5 weeks were lots of tears. I was having lots of cathartic tears where I knew they weren't tied to anything present day. They were old, and it was just my body's way of purging a lot of this density through. And then poof, like 4 or 5 weeks in, I started to have all of these gifts start to come in, but I needed to clear this grief density from the body first. So each person's path is different. And that's why it's beautiful to have like a buddy or a coach or guide or community to be doing it with you, because it is so relational. So you can't always see the growth and gifts that you're having until it's reflected to you or you speak it out sometimes.
It's so beautiful. And, if you think of mushroom itself and the mycelial network, you have the mushrooms up top, but then you have this huge, beautiful network underneath, of course, relational. That kind of just blew my mind. It was like, oh, duh, Loren, of course. So from that perspective of like the mycelial network itself, the plant itself, do you work with specific kinds? Is there specific strands and versions of the mushrooms for different people, different symptoms?
Yes, it's very similar to cannabis in that it completely is different from one strain to the next, right? And when you take it and how you take it and the ritual you build in with it, absolutely. So similarly, mushrooms have all different strains. There's lots of different strains of psilocybin, and then there's also other types of mushrooms like Amanita muscaria, the cute little red one with the little white dots, the Christmas mushroom. That too. So they're all different. They all have their own unique qualities. And when working with mushrooms, when you're just starting out, I like to work with one that's kind of a moderate potency, but just has like a gentle and subtle vibration. I work with a lot of very creative, sensitive, empathic people. That a little bit goes a long way. So that works really, really well for them because they already tend to be pretty open to the messages. And so, yeah, that seems to work really well.
Yeah, let's dive into that, because for me, same thing with cannabis. It's like, I am so sensitive. Like, it's beyond, I kid you not. I was taking very high quality CBD, no THC whatsoever, but I was very much on this deep healing journey at that time, breathwork multiple times a day, started using regular cannabis, and I had to lay down. I was physically high from CBD, and I had to check. I called the company. I was like, what? It was because I'm so sensitive. So people listening who are like me, because I am a canary in coal mine, because I'm just always the first, beautiful, empathic body and soul. And it sounds like you can relate to that. how do you approach, is it like micro dosing at that level? So someone does that fear
Mhm.
come up.
Mhm. Yes.
Yes, how do you approach that? Because it sounds like you're a seasoned veteran for empaths here.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, mushrooms, I think, are such a beautiful ally to sensitive people. And it's the people who oftentimes they're like, I'm really sensitive. I can't do a lot of things. I get overwhelmed really quickly. I can't do a lot of group work because I get overwhelmed by the energy in a group. And it actually, mushrooms become such an ally to those people because a lot of people who are very sensitive have had to live lives to accommodate this kind of harsh, noisy world that we live in right now. Well, all of us on the planet right now are working with. And so a lot of empathic people tend to be on medications and antidepressants or drink alcohol. Like they do all these things consciously or unconsciously to numb themselves to kind of take the edge off the brightness of the world because they're so sensitive. But once you work with mushrooms, you build this resiliency in your nervous system that you've never had before. And so you can embrace your sensitivity in a new way without being overwhelmed by the world. Like you're stronger and your aura is stronger and your sensitivity becomes a superpower rather than a liability that we're used to and having to moderate for. And so the gifts that I see people have, they're like just gifts of intuition, telepathy. They're like, I know who's going to call now before they call. I think of someone and they show up. I know what people are going to say before they say it in a meeting. Like all people sensitive have like inklings of that, but it's like when you really step into it, it really becomes quite a powerful tool to have.
Yes, I think I can relate so much to that. I think people listening can relate so much to that as well. Whether it's the world or the moon cycle or what the solar flare. It's just there is a lot of energy present right now, and we chose to come here into this body in this lifetime for a reason. It's a very exciting time, and we're here to master ourselves. And so there's this balance that I see in a lot of my clients is like they want to give back, they want a successful business, they want to be there for their family, like doing all these things because we feel like that's our mission this lifetime to get, which is beautiful. But really, I think if we were honest with ourselves, it's really that mastering of our own energy and our own self. As an empath, that's why we're here as these little beacons of light throughout the planet to really anchor that energy in as the whole planet is ascending right now. So I'd love to hear your opinion on that as well. We're just going straight into it here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, all the guides that I have worked with for decades and decades, like all of us have been sharing, this moment has been coming for the longest time. And all the work that we have all done personally up until now is like preparing us for right now. It's here right now. And so we get to see real time all of these kind of shoots coming up. And I think so many people, there's kind of this beautiful critical mass happening of people waking up and really understanding that it's all energy. Like our mastery of our own energy and our emotional expression is everything, right? It will dictate our entire lives, and how big or small our lives can be. And so it's a really, really beautiful time, but it's such a deep a steep change from what we are coming out of that I think right now we're all the bridge. These generations right now are this beautiful bridge to what's coming in the future, and helping people, in all different stages to walk across the bridge together.
Yes, I just thought of a Ram Dass quote. It's like we're all just walking each other home. I see that visual that you just said, that help us walk across that bridge together. And I know as an empath, it can feel like even me yesterday, the full moon got me, guys. Okay. I was ugly crying in the shower, and it was just old stuff purging, and oh my gosh. And I realized part of the ego of me was like, oh, I'm further along than this, right? I've mastered this. and you kind of get knocked off your socks. So I don't want to say that, you know, what I said earlier and what you beautifully said about the bridge is like, no, we're here to be present and feel all of this, because that in and of itself is not only clearing your energy, you're really clearing the collective as we do this too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is no such thing as fixed or healed. Like there's always, always more. I've worked with some of my favorite clients I've worked with are my 70 plus women. Lots and lots of artists, lots and lots of healers. And they're at a point in their life, like they've done so many things and they've done, had contemplative practices for 40, 50 years, some of them. And they're kind of like, how much farther can I go? And a few weeks later, they're like, oh, there's more. There's more. And it's beautiful. And again, it's so contrary to everything that we have conditioned. And we're like, symptom fix, symptom fix, symptom fix. And it's like, no, it's much more of a spiral and an ascension at the same time. And so every time we move through these days, like crying ugly in the shower, or I was with you, I was crying through it. I was watching a Netflix mystery, bawling. And I'm like, okay, this is the full moon. This is absolutely the full moon. But yeah, it's all those catharsis and the clearing and release that we have. That's what enables us to have the reflection on the other side of kind of the deep amazement and wonder and joy that's also possible. We can't have one without the other. So that's the payoff.
Oh, yes, I appreciate the more positive, the gratitude more through going through that fire, way more than, everything's just light and airy. And I think that's why we honestly came here, into this reality, into this world. And I would love to hear, we kind of talked about it, but mushrooms, you said people who it might not be for, people who are kind of going through it, very raw. But as a soul, crying in a mystery, crying in the shower, how do mushrooms on the microdosing level really help support that catharsis versus, I'm trying to get to the point where, people might be worried, oh my God, it's going to crack me open even more.
Yes.
I'm going to
feel too much. I'm not going to be able to.
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, if you've done like any kind of detox or cleanse at all, right? Like your body goes through this. You're like, am I getting the flu? Am I getting sick? And it's like, no, you kind of work through that. And then you feel fantastic. You feel radiant and light. It's exactly the same way. And it's the good kind of cry. Like microdosing just tends to make people, if you do have grief to move and release from the body, you're just more sentimental, or you're like crying at commercials or movies or in the shower. It's you're still perfectly functional and you're not sad about things. It's more of kind of a wringing out feeling that people have. Like when you just have a good cry and the next day you're like, I feel lighter because I could get it out. So it's more like that. And it's not sustained. It passes. It absolutely passes. And that's when the gifts tend to drop in, is right in the clearing.
Yes, it's always darkest before the dawn, is what I remind myself of all the time. So I know everybody's different, but I would love to talk about, creatively. We talked a lot about emotionally, spiritually, creatively, because people listening to the show are creatives, empaths, that either want to give back and help humanity through healing arts or other venues too, artists too. So I would love to hear the benefits and connectivity from a creative idea standpoint that mushrooms can help with.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics, and so fun to reflect on, because I've worked with so many artists and musicians and painters. I work with a lot of painters, and it's so beautiful to watch them, because when you're an artist and a creative, or you use your hands for anything, it's your essence that's coming forth into the world. So as you shift and grow and change and step into your own power and your own sovereignty and clarity, that gets expressed on the page or the canvas or your life or to the audience. And so it's very, very fun as a guide to witness that growth and creativity. So it's people's mediums will change. Like people will grow and shift, especially with my painters. Like it's so fun to see they'll have a style, right? That's them. And they'll, as they grow, it becomes reflected in the canvas. And so suddenly their art takes on a whole new shape and color and tone and palette. Writers too. I work with a lot of writers who feel stuck, stuck and want to move and grow. So it's really, really beautiful. And again, it's, I think, opening our minds to these natural connections that are always there, but we're so overstimulated in our modern society. We're kind of barraged by static that kind of gets in the way of our natural creativity and ideation. And also too, we're so rigid and repetitive in our society too, that I think especially the older we get, we're like, we do the same thing in the same way. And so the canals of our mind get very well worn. And when we start with mushrooms, again, it opens up these pathways, that these kind of nooks that we didn't go down in our minds before. And so it reactivates that innate creativity.
Beautiful. I'm just, thinking from an energetic perspective. You said people who use their hands, it's your essence. When energy starts moving for me, when my heart is open, I always feel that irradiation out of my hands.
Same.
So they're just building that connection through the medium, through the art form. And, I have a friend's mom. We've always joked that we're 1 week apart when we were born at the same hospital. We always joked we switched moms because her mom listens to Abraham Hicks and channels source and paints energy. And my mom's, I love my mom, is not that at all. But she listens to Abraham, gets to her connected point, and then just whatever energy she's feeling, she creates that on the canvas, on whatever medium she's creating. So it makes total sense to open yourself up to a bigger capacity versus that, that neural, very worn pathway of the habits and programs and things that we've done over and over and over from a creative standpoint too. It really opens you up to new expansiveness, because Abraham Hicks always says, you're always needing to keep up that expansion. There's no just one expansion point where we're done. It's a continual expansion.
Yes. Which is really uncomfortable to the human mind.
I know.
It's really uncomfortable. That's why I think mushrooms are so, to me, because I'm exceptionally sensitive and always have it. I think that it's the deep nervous system healing and calmness that allows for that expansion. It builds this beautiful foundation, because otherwise, if we expand and experience this opening without having the steadiness within ourselves, we do these weird self-sabotagey things,
Yes.
right? To draw back into familiar, right? And so if we couple that, if we pair them together, it's this really beautiful combination that we feel safe enough to kind of step into these gifts and different, spiritual openings that people can experience.
Yes. Was there? I just looked at the time. Was there anything else, Casey, that you have in your heart that you want to share about mushrooms, or anything we talked about, or anything new you want to talk about before we start to close the show down today?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. No, I love sharing, obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm really passionate about it. So I'm very accessible online. So I invite anybody who has further questions. This is one of those things, you open a can of worms and then people are like, oh, I have 6 more questions about this. I have a free 80-minute workshop that is actually presented in front of a creative audience. So your creatives will probably love it too. It answers all of the frequently asked questions that I get at the beginning of practice. So if people want to really dive in, or there's questions we didn't cover today they're curious about, chances are good that I cover it in that workshop.
Beautiful. We'll make sure that's in the show notes as well. And again, thank you so much for being here, being present with us, being this beautiful beacon for light, working alongside your spirit master, aka mushrooms, bringing that to us today. Thank you. How may we, the listeners, as a huge act of gratitude, be of service for you in return today?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I think just share the most powerful thing we can do is share with each other. I think as our systems and our structures and our institutions kind of come apart in the coming years, what we're doing right now, is so much more powerful than we realize. So just, yeah, women being together, sharing our stories and our experience and what has worked for us and what has empowered us and opened us, I think is the best pay it forward that one can do. So
Mm,
thank you for being here to everybody.
mm. Yes, yes, yes. And if you guys thought of somebody, a loved one, while listening to this episode, I say this all the time, please share this episode with them. There's a reason they came into your head, into your consciousness, so pay it forward. That's the reason why I started the show many years ago. It's, all of the magical synchronicities and things that I learned through podcasts that really helped me along my journey. So thank you guys so much for listening. And thank you, Casey, for coming on. And remember that your body and emotions are not in the way, they are leading the way.